The first question anyway, that tends to come up after an NFL draft class is complete is how many of these guys can help you right away. My own outlook on this for a while has been that it'd be 2. And guess what? As of yesterday, I think there are 2. Good morning to you. Good Friday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday if you're into hockey and or baseball. I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates. It's Steelers versus Bills tomorrow night in the only preseason game that really sees legitimate participation and thus, in turn, legitimate results. So even though Nate Herbig was injured and unable to participate in that joint practice that the Steelers and Bills had yesterday at Acrisure Stadium, there are way more indications than that practice that young Zach Frazier is about to be this team's center for the foreseeable future, beginning in Atlanta next month. And if that happens, that'll put both him and Peyton Wilson into the starting lineup, exactly the 2 guys that I'd expected to see do that right away. Now, parenthetically here, I'm not about to bury Troy Fautanu. If Fautanu gets healthy in a hurry, there's a chance he'll be at right tackle in a hurry. If Roman Wilson can get back onto the field, especially if the Steelers don't succeed in getting an outside wide receiver acquired, he'll be out there too. And you will always, always, always take a draft class in which you can get, I don't even want to say 4, 3 instant participants is a nice class. But Frazier becoming part of it, I'm going to maybe stretch this concept a little too far, but I think his winning the center job was a borderline must just for the offensive line. For one, I was always skeptical of the Herbig thing just because if you have him for that long, they had him all last year, and you never use him, then the whole thing feels kind of trumped up. You know, the competition, the starting out with the first team. Herbig was starting out with the first team, and he was never a first teamer, like ever. There was nothing to base that on other than the fact that he's a little older. Now, you still don't want Herbig to have whatever those center quarterback exchange issues were with Justin Fields and whoever it is that you want to blame those on. But if that's what it took to get people to decide that Frazier's going to be the one, that's fine. As it is, I could see that it would have helped push them a little bit, but way more prevalent than that is that they have glowed about Frazier from day one. Not just Mike Tomlin, not just Arthur Smith, not just Pat Meyer, but his teammates as well. This was Fields yesterday after practice talking about Frazier.
Just, continue to get better, put points up on the board, and really just clean play. Of course, last game we had a few mishaps with 2C exchange, but the biggest thing is ball security, pre-snap cleanliness, and putting points up on the board at the end of the day, no matter how we do it.
And that's the running theme regarding Frazier. It's almost boring in a way, and so is what he's done on the field in a way. Let's keep this real here, all right? You're not going to get a Marquise Pouncey in the second round. You're not going to get some perennial all-pro freak who can go running 20 yards downfield and throw a big critical block. That was Pounce. Pounce was on a trajectory for Canton the first day he stepped onto Chuck Noll Field. But if you don't have a Pounce, and you don't, and not many other teams do either, by the way, what you want out of your center is somebody whose name you never hear. Do the simple things, do the smart things, be dependable, be stout, and hey, as long as you're at it, have a nice, clean center to quarterback exchange. Frazier's been all of that. And even on those occasions where it looks like he's done something that maybe would get everybody's attention or whatever, it still turns out to be just part of the process with him. A few days ago out in Latrobe, Beanie Bishop, his former West Virginia teammate, came in on a slot corner blitz and ran into Frazier. When I say he ran into him, I mean boom. And poor Beanie ended up suffering precisely the fate one would imagine that an individual nicknamed Beanie would suffer. And when I brought this up with Frazier afterward, he was coming off the field, he shrugged it off, had a little bit of a playful smile to him when I'd made the West Virginia reference, but otherwise just said, he ran into me. Okay, that's what I mean by stout. I like this. Out of Frazier and Fautanu, the one who needed to be ready for the game in Atlanta was Frazier. Now you look at that line, and depending on health, including Fautanu's health, and of course he's not going to play against the Bills tomorrow night, you can, once Fautanu's in there, have three really young guys on that O-line, including, of course, Broderick Jones. You could have Mason McCormick getting ready to push at a guard position, even while you still have Isaac Seumalo and James Daniels in the fold. But you're getting started. You're getting that line not just constructed, but out there. I like that a lot. When we come back, J1Q. This segment of Daily Shot is brought to you by the personal injury law firm of Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly, and George, LGKG. They represent people who are hurt in car accidents, who need help with workers' comp, who filed for medical malpractice claims. The attorneys at LGKG have been keeping promises in our region for over 80 years. Learn more about them at lgkg.com or by calling 888-842-5454. Today's J1Q, and it's a perfect one to close out this particular week, comes from Michael, who says, DK, who else is available other than Brandon Ayuk? There has to be a plan B in place. The Steelers cannot go into this season without adding at least a WR2. First thing I'll say to this, Mike, is that I would not count Ayuk coming to the Steelers out until it's all the way over. How those of us on the outside feel about it really doesn't matter. Meaning, everyone took one look at Ayuk standing on the San Francisco sideline wearing 49ers gear, although he wasn't practicing. It was just like a T-shirt or whatever. And it feels like the sentiment just went all the way to, oh, yep, that's done. Okay, who else is there? He hasn't signed. He hasn't said yes to anything. And believe it or not, although I'm sure this does seem tough to believe at this stage, he can't wait forever. John Lynch can't wait forever. And I'll tell you what, if I'm the Steelers, I would be telling somebody sooner rather than later that they can't wait forever either. Because, as you point out, they'd clearly like to get someone to bookend with George Pickens. And they can say what they want, and they did again yesterday, in praising Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson and the guys that they currently have, but, they're also the ones who've been working on a deal in which a lot of capital would go toward the Niners and a lot of money would go toward Ayuk. And that speaks way more loudly than, man, we really like those reps that Van Jefferson had today. My belief is that if Ayuk were to fall through, the Steelers would continue pursuing other options. Our reporting at DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this was as of a couple of weeks ago that we'd heard from the inside that the other two possible targets were DK Metcalf and, Tyreek Hill, which is a name that I sure wasn't expecting to come, but then we didn't come up with it. That came from inside the building. That's not a prediction. It's not even something that I could envision happening. But this is how reporting works. You get information, you try to authenticate it, you try to piece it together, and you share it. Are there other wide receivers who are out there who might be available in some form or other? Everybody knows about the holdout in Dallas with CeeDee Lamb, but, I would just be guessing. I'd be throwing stuff against the wall. The only reporting that I have to share, and even that's just a repeat from something that we already reported at DK Pittsburgh Sports a few days ago, is that the Steelers internally had three names. It appears that Ayuk would have been the top priority, but maybe Ayuk was just the first chronological pursuit they'd have. I don't know. I do believe that this is going to be something the team needs to close out. And I'd say they need to close it out pretty quickly, because not only do they have this WR2 issue, but don't forget, there's still Cam Hayward and his extension. There's still Pat Freiermuth and his extension. And maybe even, opening up something with Najee Harris. I don't know. But they have their own players to take care of, so they need to get their own cap situation straightened out. And anytime you're just throwing $30 million onto it, or whatever it would be for Ayuk, there's a lot of different moving parts that have to be addressed, not least of which is several restructures. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Steelers. We will have a special edition of Daily Shot for you Sunday morning after the Saturday game against the Bills. But only if you behave.